Hello everyone, and welcome to SentiSight image annotation seminar, webinar actually. Today I'm gonna talk mostly about image annotation features of SentiSight.ai. However, we received quite a lot of questions about model training. I'll mention a little bit about model training features as well. If you have any questions regarding what I speak or regarding SentiSight in general, write the questions in the chat, and I'll try to answer those questions in the end of the webinar. Please make the questions related to SentiSight and even better related to image annotation, because during email registration we got quite a lot of questions about general AI topics, such as is Tesla self-driving safe? I'm sorry, I'm not really competent to answer questions about Tesla. But if you ask questions about SentiSight and things related to it, I'll try to answer them. Okay, and by the way, who doesn't know me, I'm the project lead of SentiSight. SentiSight is not a separate company. We are actually a product of neurotechnology, which has more than 30 years of experience of development of various algorithms, mostly biometrics, but also computer vision and robotics and recently even stocks, ultrasound, and so on. But this webinar will be just about SentiSight and about mostly about image annotation capabilities. So to begin with, I'll show you rather basic SentiSight image annotation features, and we'll build on them. To label images for this is, by the way, SentiSight home screen when you register for SentiSight and you upload the data, or actually you can also use sample data since the latest release. So this is the sample data. Once you create a new project, let me just show you how it looks like. You can actually load the sample data by clicking here. I wonder if I can, okay. And this will load exactly the same data as I have. And also you can load sample models by clicking here. So this is this sample data, and I already have a few different kinds of mushrooms, and these mushrooms are labeled both for classification and for object detection. But first I want to show you how to label images for classification using SentiSight. So there are two ways. First option is to label images for classification from this home screen. And for this, you just need to select some images that you want to label with one of those classification labels, and select the classification label on the left. If the label does not exist, you can always enter a new label here. And to label those selected images with this label, just click a plus sign, and this label will appear on those images. Similarly, to remove the label from those images, you can either click on this X sign. This will remove a label from just from one image, or as before, you can select some images and click minus sign to remove the label from all of those images. Next, we will show you how to label classification from image labeling screen. And by the way, to enter image labeling screen, you need to right click on an image, select labeling tools, and label images. This will open our labeling tool, which has quite a lot of different capabilities. And you can also add classification labels from this window. For this, you just need to add classification label here, and autocomplete should help you to enter this label. And of course, this label should be present also from the home screen. Right. Next thing is object detection labels. Object detection labels will be present here. For the moment, I'll delete the one which is already labeled. And to label object detection, basically you just draw a bounding box around the object. Make sure you select the bounding box tool. We have shortcuts for most of these tools. So for example, to select bounding box tool, you just click B button. After you label the bounding box, you can resize the bounding box, you can move it around, and of course you can delete the bounding box if you want. We have some additional features for each object. So one of them is to mark as occluded. So if you mark the bounding box as occluded, it will be in a dashed line, and also when you download the image labels in a JSON file, you will see that it will have occluded property. So by the way, the idea of image annotation webinar is mostly for those people who want to label the images on SentiSight, but later download the image labels and perhaps use them to train the models on their own PCs with their own tools. So this is just a convenient platform which you have online that you can use to label your data sets and manage large labeling projects. Another property that all objects have is visibility. So you can always turn off the visibility of labeled objects, which might help you to label more objects so that we are not hidden behind those larger objects. Or just it can also help you to correct the labels, because sometimes you cannot see very well where the label should end. Also, each object has attributes tag. So here you can add attributes such as, for example, edible mushroom, and perhaps large mushroom, and I don't know, maybe the color, and so on. So you can add any attributes you want. And these attributes will also be present in the JSON file that you download. And in case of polygons and bounding boxes, you have a rasterize object button, which will convert the bounding box to a bitmap. But I'll show it later when I talk about polygons. And also we have roll, pitch, yaw angle labeling, but I'll also show it a little bit later. What I wanted to show also, we have different modes. So by default, it's in edit mode, which allows to change the bounding box. But also, if you click on a place where there are no objects, it will start creating a new bounding box. However, if you click a new object, it will always create a new bounding box, even if it's on top of an existing one. Otherwise, you cannot create a new bounding box here because it will just be dragging the current bounding box. And finally, for the bounding boxes, we have a specific extra feature is to add key points. Key points are important points in the object. For example, on a human face, it could be the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and so on. In mushroom, let's just, for now, let's just mark the top of the mushroom. Bottom of the mushroom, the right side of the mushroom, and the left side of the mushroom. Okay, and maybe the middle, which we'll define as the intersection between the head of the mushroom and the leg of the mushroom. So middle. And what's convenient about these key points is that actually you can save these key points so that you don't have to enter the names of the key points when you label the next object of the same time. So if you click this save button and you go to the next image, you can actually mark the top, the bottom, the right, left, and middle of the mushroom, and you don't need to enter the names for these key points. So this speeds up the process. All right, so I guess this is more or less it about the bounding boxes. So we have a lot of different options, such as changing the line width, image brightness, contrast, but I'll leave it to you to play around with these. You can also hide the label names to make if we hinder some of the objects in the image and so on. Okay, maybe right now I'll quickly show you how the downloaded labels look like in a JSON format. So if you click on download labels, you can select what you want to download. So I'll select the bounding boxes and the images themselves for now. You will get a zip file which you can save to your PC. And in the labels file, you'll have a JSON. Well, you have image properties, the bounding boxes, and the coordinates of the corners of the bounding box. As I said, is it occluded or not? The label of the bounding box, and all the attributes that you marked, and the coordinates of the key points. So for other objects, the JSON file will look in a similar way. Okay, so let's move on to polygon labeling. So for polygon labeling, you need to select the Polygon tool, and you need to draw points around the object that you want to label. Now, I'm not really labeling in a very careful way. Okay, I accidentally double-clicked, so that finishes labeling. But once you finish labeling, you can always add new points. I guess something went wrong. Okay, you can add new points, or you can relocate the existing points. Actually, to finish labeling, there are two ways. You can actually even three ways. You can either double-click. You can if you do something that you didn't want, you can always undo, which is another useful feature. You can finish the bounding box by clicking on the original point, or just by clicking Enter key on the keyboard. So there are three ways to finish the labeling of polygons. Sorry, not of the bounding box. Also, in the polygon, we have new object as before. We have delete tool, which I think deletes the points in the polygon. We have make a hole tool, which will create a hole inside the polygon. And we have a new polygon in a group tool, which will create a new polygon, but this polygon will belong to the same object. Otherwise, if you create a new object, it will create a separate labeling object. So in this case, this is mostly for the cases where the object is partly occluded. Maybe there's some other object in between them, and you want to label somehow that it's the same object. It just consists of two polygons. Right. And we have some thing called set direction. Which this was mostly internal thing, but maybe it will be useful for somebody else as well. So this sets direction for the whole labeling object. This is 2D direction. Later I'll show you 3D direction, as I promised, how to label roll pitch yaw angles. Right, and as I said, the polygons can be converted to bitmaps by clicking rasterize all objects. This will convert all polygons, or clicking on this button here. Actually, yeah, this border I think is from set direction. It should not happen. But anyway, let me try to delete and create a new. Oh, I selected Polyline Tool, not Polygon Tool. Sorry. Okay, so if you want to rasterize this polygon, you click on this button, and this rasterizes the polygon. So now this polygon is no longer a polygon, but it's a bitmap, and you can draw bitmap using the bitmap tool. You can convert this back to a polygon by clicking here. And when converting, you also can select whether you want to simplify polygons converted from bitmaps. If this checkbox is checked, then there will be more points on the converted polygon. let me show with all the polygons. So there'll be significantly more points. So then this will be more accurate, but also have more points. Okay, I'll select this, and I'll convert again. As you see, there is way less points. But in fact, the most convenient tool for marking the bitmaps is probably the smart labeling tool. So you can access the smart labeling tool by clicking here. And firstly, you need to select the area where you want to select, where you want to label the bitmap. If you don't select any area, the whole image is selected by default. So I'll select this mushroom. And you need to label the foreground, which is E shortcut. And just draw a little bit of the mushroom that you want to label. And this smart labeling tool will try to extrapolate and label as much as of the object as possible. Okay. Now, sometimes it marks a little bit too much of an object, so you can instruct him to remove the labels by marking which parts of the image is not the object, but it's a background. And you can, if you accidentally mark something you didn't want, you can always delete your markings either for the background or for the foreground. And once you are more or less happy with the extracted bitmap, you can click here, or you can just press enter, and this smart labeling tool bitmap will be converted to a bitmap object. And then you can zoom in to some particular places and correct the areas that were not marked. We also have a bucket fill tool, which is the same as from famous paint program. We have erase tool. Just when you are erasing, make sure that the correct object is selected. Because, okay, let me draw a new object. And now this new object is selected. So I can erase this object, but if I try to erase another object, it will not be possible. I need to first select this object and then erase it. You can, of course, change the brush size. This is erase tool. And this goes both for erasing and for drawing. Okay, this pretty much covers the bitmap tool. So I'll quickly show two more tools that we have. So we have the Polyline Tool, which is similar to bitmap tool, but it does not have the area. So it's just a line. And we have a point tool, which is just points on an image. And finally, we have something called roll pitch yaw angle labeling. So the roll pitch yaw angle can be either labeled for the whole image or for each bounding box separately. So for the moment, I'll show how it works for the whole image. So these three lines denote what is the object orientation. And if you are not sure what those mean, you can look into this example image, and it shows how each angle is related to the object. So if I configure the roll angle, it will roll the object around the green line. If I configure the pitch, the pitch angle, it will roll around the red line more or less, and the yaw angle will roll around the blue line. So this is mostly useful, for example, if you want to mark the direction of the face when a person is looking at the camera or to the side, so you can mark the direction to which the person is looking, or the direction of any other types of objects. So if you mark the roll pitch yaw for the whole image, you can only create one labeling object like this, but I'll show you now how you can label roll pitch yaw angles for each bounding box. So let's assume you have several bounding boxes. Okay, let's say this is some sort of mushrooms, and you can add roll pitch yaw angles for each of the bounding boxes. So this is pretty much it about the labeling tool. And I wanted to show you one new feature that I'm quite excited about, is labeling images by similarity. So let's say I'll remove the classification labels from a few images. And for example, I want to label those images for classification, but I don't want to do it manually. I want to do it semi-automatically. So what I can do is right-click on one of those images after you select them, and select Label by Similarity. I'll explain what the parameters mean later. For the moment, I'll just click confirm, and this will open a label by similarity tool. So for each query image that I have selected, the algorithm will find the most similar images to the query image. And the query image will be labeled based on the labels of the images that are similar. So you need to have some images in your dataset that are already labeled, and some images that you want to label. So you can either upload those images, or you can select them from your dataset. In this case, I selected the images from my dataset, just they didn't have any labels. And based on the images that are found, most of them have this Macrolepiota procera mushroom tag. So it will have the score based, which is basically the average of the similarity scores. And one of the images have Boletus adulis tag. So this, since there are 10 images, basically it has the average of 6%, which is 58 divided by 10. And for the other images, also we found the most similar images and basically labeled the query image based on the similar images that we found. So as you can see in this case, the algorithm labeled all of the images correctly. But if the results are not satisfactory, you can always change the parameters. So, for example, you can change the number of similar images that are compared to the original query image. So, in this case, I use 10, but for example, I can use only 5 images. Or maybe I only want to use only one, the most similar image, and based on that, I want to label the query image. Also, it's possible to use more, let's say 30 images to label the query image. Another parameter that you can change is the score threshold. So by default, it's 30%, and all labels that are above 30% will be marked as basically predicted labels. However, for example, in this case, when I added more images, the correct label is already below the 30%, so I can adjust the threshold to 20%, and maybe the results will be more accurate. However, you can always adjust the results manually by selecting and unselecting the checkboxes. Just remember that after you change the threshold, the things that you marked will be reset based on the threshold. Also, there is a possibility to always mark just the top scoring label. This is more useful for single label images. So in this case, only the top scoring label is marked for each image. Right, and after you adjusted the parameters, and if you are satisfied with the labels that are suggested, you can click select all images on just Control A on your keyboard and click Add to Dataset. This will add the images and the labels to your dataset. So since the images were already in your dataset, this has only added the predicted labels. And also, auto-labeled tag is added for all of those images. This basically indicates that these images were labeled automatically, not by hand. But if you change the labels, for example, I change this label manually, this auto-labeled will be removed. Or if I add some additional labels, also this auto-labeled tag is removed from the image. So the good thing is with this labeling by similarity tool is that you don't need to train any model. This can be used out of the box. You just need to have some labeled images. And you can also do it iteratively. So for example, I have labeled some images with this label by similarity tool, and when I want to label some additional image, then when I label this additional image, all images that I previously labeled will already be used as suggestions, to make suggestions for this new image to be labeled. Okay. This is labeled by Similarity tool. Similarly, you can actually train a classification model to perform this AI-assisted labeling. So in this case, I already have a trained classification model. However, if you want to train a new model, you just click train, and then you select the type of the model. Since all of my images have just a single label, I'll select a single label classification model. Here you can select the training time. If you want, you can select also some advanced parameters, but for the moment, I'll leave everything at their default values. And I just click start, and it will train. It will start training a model, but I'll show you the model that I already have trained here. Basically, if you open it, you can look into various statistics on train and validation sets, and you can look into actual predictions that it made on train or validation sets. But as I said, training models is not the main discussion topic of today's seminar. So what I mostly wanted to show is how to use those trained models for labeling images. So if I have some unlabeled images in my dataset, I can select them, and I can right-click on those images, and I can click AI tools and predict. Then I select a train model that I want to use, and I click confirm. And this will make predictions of what are the labels of those images. As in label by Similarity tool, I can change those labels by checking or unchecking the boxes. And similarly as before, I can select the images and I click add to dataset, and those images will be labeled by the predicted labels. Sorry. Yes, as in label by Similarity tool, you can do this iteratively. You can label some images. However, in this case, if you labeled more images, you will always need to train a new model to make the model more accurate. Whereas in label by Similarity tool, which in my opinion, in most cases is superior, you don't need to train a new model. You just add new images, you label them, and you can, again, add a new batch of images, and the suggested labels will become more and more accurate. Okay, so this is AI-assisted labeling for classification, but another thing I wanted to show is AI-assisted labeling for object detection. So object detection model training is actually very similar. You just click train. Just before you click train, make sure that you select the images on which you want to train, or that nothing is selected. If nothing is selected, it will train on all images. So click train object detection, and you click start, and then you'll train object detection model. I will not do it now because, okay, the classification model that I started to train is already trained. So you can see here that everything looks fine. But I just wanted to show you how the suggested label. So actually, let me remove all labels, both classification object detection from those images. So to remove the labels, I click image operations, and no, actually labeling tools, and remove labels from images. So now it removed all labels from images. If I open them with a labeling tool, you will see that we don't have any labels. And let's say I want to label those images. So I right click on those images, select AI tools, predict, and select sample object detection model or the model that you trained. So I click confirm, and it will make bounding box predictions for these images. So if you want to manually review those predictions, there are two ways. You can just uncheck the bounding boxes which you think are inaccurate, or you can actually right click on an image and click labeling, and you can either delete or adjust the bounding boxes manually. And once you exit, the changes will be saved, and actually the checkboxes will disappear because it's already manually edited. If you want to edit again, you can, for example, open the labeling tool again. So once you are happy with the image labels, again, you select all images and you click add to dataset. You can also change the image size, by the way, if you want. And once you click add to dataset, these images will be marked as auto-labeled, and when you open them, you will see the bounding boxes. Okay, so as before, for object detection AI assisted labeling tool, you can do it iteratively. You can label some images, then you can train a model, make predictions on unlabeled images, and then add those predictions to your data set to train a new model. Okay. So now we'll move a little bit more to the labeling project management features. So the first thing, it's actually a rather new feature, but people who are labeling images or the labeling project supervisor can evaluate whether the image was labeled correctly or incorrectly. So thumbs up or thumbs down, or nothing. So once you label, you can also see who has evaluated this image. Once, okay, let's evaluate a little bit more images. Okay. Once you evaluate those images, either you or some other people can filter the evaluated images by the evaluation. So we can filter images that were evaluated as correctly labeled, as incorrectly labeled, or that were labeled, that were evaluated either as correct or incorrect. Okay. So next useful thing for project management is to see how much time each user has spent labeling the images. So for this, you need to go to the project management screen, which is this icon, which opens the project manager, and you can click see labeling time to see how much time each user has spent labeling images in each project. You can filter the users either by project, or you can select a particular user, and you can also select the date range. You can download all of these statistics as a CSV file as well. At the moment, we don't have how many images were labeled in each project. But for this, actually, at the moment, it's possible to filter images by who have labeled these images. So, for example, I can filter which images were labeled by this user or by this user, and you'll see how many images he has labeled here. But actually, we are planning to add this information into the labeling table so that it is easier to evaluate the productivity of each user, how many images were labeled by each user, and how much time he has spent labeling. Another useful feature of the project management screen is that you can see all of your projects on the left side and all of the users who are labeling images in those projects on the right side. And if you open some particular projects, you will see which users are labeling images in those projects. And also, you can actually select one or more projects on the left side and one or more users on the right side. And then you can click plus sign to add those users to selected projects. Or you can click minus sign to remove those users from selected projects. You can actually, this is many-to-many relationship, so you can even add more than one project and more than one user, and you can add actually some of those users are already in the project, I think. Let me select different users. Oh, okay. Actually, I have exceeded the project limits for user shares. So I'll add to a different project which has higher limits. So all of those users are added to all of those selected projects. And once the user is inside the project, it can see all images inside the project and he can label them. Also, we have rows for each user. So by default, we have project owner, labeler, developer, and admin, but you can add new rows and you can change the permissions for those rows. So you can click edit roles and you can click edit role to check which permissions are allowed, which privileges are allowed for this role name. Okay. You can also add new projects from this screen, and you can add users which are not present in the list to your projects. So let me see what else. Okay, I'll show a little bit more of our image filtering capabilities. So you can filter the images by the type of labels that we contain. For example, I can filter, actually all of them contain object detection labels right now. I can filter, for example, images that I have labeled myself or I have reviewed myself. By the way, if someone else labels the images that are seen by me, the seen status will be removed, and I'll need to review the image again to have its seen status. The seen status is denoted by a little eye icon on the top right corner of the image. Yeah, you can also filter out the labeled images and so on. Okay, let me clear the filters. So this is filter by type. You can also filter by labels. So for example, you can filter images with some particular label. And you can also filter images by the users who have labeled it. So for example, I can filter the images that were labeled by some particular users, or that are reviewed or seen by particular users. Or you can also make different combinations that images that are seen by one user or labeled by another user. Actually, more interesting combination would be that are labeled by one user but not seen by another user. So and this should be AND operator. So these are the images that this other user should probably review if there is a policy that each image should be reviewed by two labelers. Okay, so I think this is more or less it about the project management possibilities that I wanted to show in this webinar. Maybe one thing that I haven't showed is that you can not just download the labels, but you can also upload the labels in a JSON format. If you're not sure of the format, you can always first download the JSON format and make sure that you are formatting it correctly. But we also have it in our user guide, the examples and the description of the format. Right. So I think this is pretty much it, what I wanted to present about image annotation possibilities using SentiSight. So I hope you enjoy our functionalities. And let me see if there are some questions. Okay, I don't see any. I don't see any questions. If you have any questions, please post it in the chat. Otherwise, yes, if you have any questions, you can write me an email. I'll try to answer those questions that I received that I think are relevant by email because most of them were not regarding the image annotation, but regarding the model training or actually some general AI questions. So yeah, I'll try to answer those by email. So let me just double check if I haven't missed anything. Yeah, so if there are no more questions, actually there wasn't any questions so far, but I just thank you for your attention. And yeah, if I mean one more thing is I would like to encourage you to use SentiSight image annotation tool, because we are quite flexible, and if you notice any bugs, for example, in our tool, we are very fast in fixing them. And also, if you are a paid customer and you would like to have some additional features, we are very flexible, and most likely will consider to implement those additional features in the near future. So yeah, I guess yeah, my point is that we are a flexible team, and we are open to work with anyone, basically. Okay, so thank you everybody for the attention, and if you wish to ask something or have any more feedback, please send us an email. So goodbye, everyone. Thank you.